I've been talking about a Jonathan Kuminga show for 6 months. That's how long I've been hyping this up. I feel awful that it's taken this long to finally produce this show and broadcast this show. Yet we're going to give some love to Kaminga, the number 7 pick in the 2021 draft. Who is this kid? You want to learn about him? Stay tuned. We're going to talk all about who we hope is the future superstar of the Golden State Warriors, Jonathan Kuminga. So sit back, relax, pour a stiff one, light him if you got him, and enjoy the Golden Days.
That is it for us today, and we will leave you with a... I can't do it. We'll do it live! Fuck it! Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live! And thing sucks! Woo! Let's go!
In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Come on and break me off. Cause I get what I want and I like what I see. If you got shake that.
Hell yeah! All right, welcome to the Golden Days, a daily program covering the Golden State Warriors and the NBA and much more. We're part of the Believe Network. I'm your host, Cyrus Saatsaz. Thank you for joining the program. You can follow me on Threads and Instagram at Dog Wild. As well, I first want to congratulate the Boston Celtics. You're the champs. Bravo. You didn't have the Golden State Warriors there to stop your progress like in 2022. But they're the champs. And here's one thing I want to bring up about the Celtics before we talk about Jonathan Kuminga today. A year ago, when I was hosting that other program, and the news came out that the Boston Celtics had signed, or was it a trade, or was it, I already forgot whether it was a free agency move or a trade, but whatever. When the Celtics acquired Kristaps Porzingis, I was one of the only folks in this whole scene saying, why are the Warriors not making similar moves? And people laughed like they do anytime you broach something new, anytime you present a fresh idea that is not a conformist approach, that is not part of the groupthink that floods anything related to the Warriors out there. Kristaps Porzingis at 7'3" gives you size. He stretches the floor. Is he injury prone? Yes. But is he a talent? Yes. And the Celtics are the world champions now. Imagine if the Golden State Warriors had a player like Kristaps Porzingis on their roster to make life that much easier for Stephen Curry and company. But no, the Warriors thought the status quo was the right move. And again, that's why you come to this program, because I sit here and tell you when Steve Kerr is doing dumb things. and the truth of the matter is, I should not be the only one seeing these things like a chessboard, watching plays happening and seeing the end result, moves before it's actually happening. And it's why I struggle with the Steve Kerr regime, is because he's slow to react. He doesn't see the bigger picture, the landscape of the NBA and what is needed to achieve success. So I digress. The point is, a player like Kristaps Porzingis would have helped the Warriors immensely, and it helped the Boston Celtics win a championship. I know he's nowhere near their best players. Congrats to Jaylen Brown, Cal alum, for winning Finals MVP. Congrats to Jason Tatum, a player that I think in terms of ceilings is where Jonathan Kuminga is going to reach. But for 2024, the Leprechauns are the world champions. So congrats to them. And let's hope the Warriors apply a little ingenuity to their offseason in terms of players to add to make them better. We're going to be talking about Jonathan Kuminga today. I've been hyping this up for a long time, as I mentioned, 6 months. And I want to, before we get started, give a ton of credit to Connor Letourneau. He's been a Golden State Warriors beat reporter for a damn long time. And he made the transition from sports to news with the San Francisco Chronicle, and he's doing an immense job. I bring him up because congrats, he's a first-time dad. He's also a very close friend of mine, and I miss doing work with him, but because of some stupidity that happened on that lame, worthless platform, Twitter, 2 years ago, he doesn't do much podcast work now because a mob of people, just because they didn't like a incredibly innocuous opinion, scared him off. It's asinine, but that's Twitter for you. I digress. The point is, I bring up Conor Letourneau because he wrote a fantastic biography, a terrific profile piece on Jonathan Kuminga. This was a short time after he was drafted by the Warriors. He spent some time with them in Vegas during that first summer league. And a lot of what I'm going to be reading to you today comes from his research. And what's really crazy, and a huge reason why I decided to dedicate a show to Kaminga, is because there is not a lot of information available out there in terms of who Kaminga is, what his background is, what his family life is like. And I wanted to kind of, open people's eyes and give some exposure to the kid. Chances are he's not going to get his contract extension this offseason. You're likely going to see that next year. I support that move if that's what the Warriors do, for the simple reason that individuals typically, not always, but typically are more motivated, are more incentivized to perform at your absolute peak when you're fighting for a new deal. We don't know yet what kind of individual Jonathan Kuminga is when he is comfortable financially. And sometimes that's what it takes for players to be that much hungrier in terms of achieving goals that they're setting out to reach. The old adage, necessity is the mother of invention, applies to a scenario like this. So the point is, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to hold off until next offseason to give Kaminga his extension. I am so stoked to watch Kaminga this coming year, because this could be a breakout season for this young kid who is still only 21. ACS04, welcome to the chat. You ask, why do some Warriors hate Jonathan Kuminga so much? I think you refer to fans. Talking to Warriors, a lot of them don't think he's going to be as good as I think. I think Kaminga could be a superstar in my eyes. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think the primary reason, and I talked about this a lot on my old program, and I'll bring it up again here, a huge reason for a lot of Dub Nation's hesitancy to embrace Kaminga, to welcome him with open arms as the present and future of this organization, is because of Steve Kerr. What among many things I've learned covering the Warriors the last few years, much more so than when I was covering them in the 2000s and 2010s, is that a lot of individuals, both in the media and in the fan base, will worship what Steve Kerr says and treat it like fact, even when it's an opinion, which is most of what Kerr espouses. So when Steve Kerr is not playing Kaminga, in a lot of people's eyes who don't think independently, they're thinking, oh, if Steve Kerr thinks something's wrong with him, there's got to be something wrong with him. And then you add on to that the fact that Kaminga, not once but twice, either himself or through proxies, more specifically his agent, criticized Kerr for his treatment of Kaminga, for not playing him, for benching him. And a lot of people were upset about that. Steve Kerr has loyalists. So that's the reason for Kaminga not being embraced the way a lot of other individuals are. It's because his head coach, who has fans as a head coach, a very flawed head coach, when Steve Kerr decides on something, you'll get legitimately like at least half of the fan base just rolling with it because he's got those 4 rings. And again, I personally like to judge every instance individually. I like to, analyze every individual or circumstance individually, and not. And I personally, and I hope this why, at least the part of the reason why this show is successful, I don't like to just sit here and listen to someone else's opinion and just take it as fact. I'd like to actually form my own opinions, applying critical thinking. And when it comes to Jonathan Kuminga, again, since the summer league of his rookie season, I saw something special in him. folks that I talk to in this industry, whether they're former players, coaches, executives, media members, everyone that I personally trust and who I rely on to help form my opinions after talking to a lot of other people, it was a universal consensus among the quote unquote experts that I rely on that Kaminga is the real deal. He's got tremendous feel for the game, tremendous athleticism, strength. The kid can play. He's a baller. And again, for me, seeing how naturally ambidextrous he is really sticks out, because a lot of players out there, even some of the best, are not as good going left as you may think they are. Like Stephen Curry is ambidextrous. He has no flaws going left or right. And that is a huge plus. It's a grossly underrated aspect of basketball, in my humble opinion. So Kaminga's got it all. The only thing left in his game that he needs to work on, I think, is the outside shooting. His three-point shooting this last year, for example, I'm going to go over his stats real quick before I read the bio. He shot this last season from 32.1%, and that's after a horrible start. That number needs to go up. Is his shooting form the issue? Hell no. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. His shooting form reminds me of Jimmy Chitwood, one of the protagonists from the movie Hoosiers, who was Mr. Fundamentals in terms of shooting in that film. Jonathan Kuminga's shooting form is borderline perfect. That is not the issue. And he's got touch. It's just repetition. It's just experience. Most players in the NBA, their three-point shooting improves as you go along. We're hopefully going to see that as well with Jonathan Kuminga. And we saw the outside shooting 2 years ago shine. 2 years ago, Kaminga shot 37% from deep. He's a career 34.1% three-point shooter. You're going to see that number improve as his career goes along. But in every other facet, I hear people criticize his ball handling. I think that's utter BS. His ball handling is already exemplary, and that's only going to get better. I hear people talk about his defense. That is utter malarkey in terms of the criticism. He is already one of the best defenders on the Golden State Warriors roster at the age of 21. Steve Kerr thankfully recognizes that, which is why Kaminga routinely defends the best player on the opposing team, regardless of position, unless the other player is a center, or sometimes you might see switches, or you might see Wiggins taking on that assignment of the best player, but it's always either Wiggins or Kaminga, and Gary Payton II, obviously, and Draymond are exemplary defenders, but you'll see Steve Kerr oftentimes wanting to preserve Draymond's energy, so Draymond won't typically get that assignment in terms of defending the best player on the opposing team routinely. Kaminga gets that job for a very good reason. The kid can ball. He's only 21 years old. I can't wait to see what the final product is going to be, and that might be years to come. I foresee great things from Jonathan Kuminga this coming year. Now, Keith Willis writes that the one thing he doesn't have is a coach that believes in him. Now you're onto something, and that's been a gripe of mine for a very long time. Imagine what we could get out of Kaminga if Steve Kerr looked at him the way he looks at, say, Brandon Podziemski, right? I mean, Podziemski as a rookie, who's only 3 months younger than Jonathan Kuminga, those two players, the two youngest on the Warriors roster. Podziemski was on the court immediately. And again, we've talked about this before. It's a new platform, so I'll say it again. Steve Kerr, what he values goes against what most other executives and coaches in the NBA consider most important, right? To Steve Kerr, assisted turnover is a stat he worships. I don't worship that. And a huge reason is, look at Stephen Curry's assisted turnover ratio. Look at Kobe Bryant's. Look at Michael Jordan's. Look at LeBron James. They are not leaders in that category because it's an overrated category, man. I'm not saying dismiss it, but don't worship it like it is the barometer for a player's success. But Steve Kerr worships that stat. He loves ball handling. And for some reason, size is not a priority in his evaluations. Now, will that change this year? We've heard from him that it will, so we'll see what happens. But you're absolutely right, Keith Willis, that it's a shame that Steve Kerr does not have the faith and the belief in Kaminga and Moody the way we see him show it to certain other players, his favorites, right? Steve Kerr plays favorites. He has biases. And as a leader, I think that sucks. That is not good leadership, especially when it's as obvious and transparent as he makes it. Adrian Gutierrez, what is up? Yes, I am no longer with the other network. I'm now here now, part of Believe. So hope you subscribe. Thanks for joining the party. And thank you for Laura. What's up? Our future correspondent in London when the US Team USA is there. I'm totally fibbing, although I do hope you do pursue that. And Laura Doan, one of my faves, joining us from England, writing that she just left a comment on my previous show, letting people know that I'm here now. Thank you so much for doing that. That means the world. Nick Fensky writing real fast that Jonathan Kuminga is the future of the Golden State Warriors. Can hear that show a little later. That's coming up right now. I'm going to get into Jonathan Kuminga and his biography. Cool Breeze, thank you for the support. Trav Rock 79, thank you for the support. I want to change that graphic, by the way. I'm not a big fan of this bubble that we have here right now. And Laura, thank you. I think you're funny as well. Your sense of humor. By the way, Laura, write your handle. I don't have it memorized in the chat because your Instagram stories, I'm not being hyperbolic here. I'm not exaggerating. You literally give me the biggest laughs of my day. Thank you for that. And I want to tell people what your handle is so other folks, if you want them to follow you, can follow you. Cool Breeze writes, do you think Klay Thompson is gone? 50-50. A lot of this could all be just for show in terms of Klay with the negotiating tactics and following the team. Side note, Klay Thompson's dog, Rocco, is still healthy and looking good. Klay posted a new picture of Rocco recently on his social media account, and Rocco is 12. Rocco turns 13 in April. So every day that we see any photographic video evidence of Rocco doing well is a joy to me because that means he's still with us, so that's awesome to see. All right, Jonathan Kuminga. Let's get into the Warriors' potential future superstar. One of their most important assets, certainly when you hear trade speculation with the Warriors. Unfortunately, Kaminga's name shows up a lot, mainly because of his value, because other teams see what Steve Kerr sometimes does not, a burgeoning superstar. And so it's unfortunate, again, that you see Kaminga's name mentioned in these trades. And again, the only player that realistically I would be okay with the Warriors trading Kaminga for is Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm still putting that energy out there for the simple reason that Giannis, if he really wants to continue winning championships, has to get over Milwaukee and move on. That is a dumpster fire of a roster. That team is going nowhere. Giannis, start percolating the thought of the Golden State Warriors, of being teammates with Stephen Curry. I'll trade Jonathan Kuminga for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Throw away those garbage takes involving Kuminga being involved in a trade for Kevin Durant. Durant is an awesome player, but he's not bringing you a chip. He makes you maybe a playoff team instead of a play-in team. And then you're throwing away Jonathan Kuminga, who could be a future superstar if you make that trade. Enough. Enough. No more. I don't want to hear Kaminga trades unless it's for Giannis or somebody of that caliber. And Giannis is the only one who I think has a tinge of reality when it comes to potentially being traded or moved. So anyways, Kaminga's working out this summer. If you follow him on social media, like he did last summer, he's posted clips of himself working out. He's in the gym. He's working on his game. He's working on his body. And why don't we hear from Jonathan Kuminga in terms of how that offseason is going? This is him from an exit interview last month. And here is Kaminga talking about how his workouts this summer could lead to bigger and better things.
Andrew Wiggins said he sees an all-star season coming for you. What do you think about that, and how soon is that goal for you, maybe?
I mean, it's all just going to depend on how I take this summer. It's just going to come down to how I go through this summer, because anything is possible, and I feel like I could do it going through next year. It's just all comes down to what type of summer I'm going to have.
And again, he's putting in the work right now. I'm super excited to see what the finished product is going to be. One more soundbite from Kaminga Here he is talking about what the future might hold for the Warriors' young core. And again, if you're a Warriors fan, the future is so bright. The present is so bright. I am not doom and gloom. Are the Warriors championship contenders? So far, probably not. But are they playoff contenders? Hell yeah. Could they make some noise? Hell yeah. And it starts, besides Steph and Dre, all right, those are your leaders. But those two are going to need a lot of help. But that help, at least a lot of it, could come from this current young core. Kaminga, Moses Moody, Brandon Pajemski, Trace Jackson Davis, Guy Santos, who I personally love, Lester Quinones, who I personally love, and the team better bring him back. He is a restricted free agent this offseason. That is something to build on. And again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins on the same team does not work. But let's say if Klay walks, and someone asked earlier, and I'm sorry if I didn't fully answer it, whether or not I think Klay's going to stay. I think it's 50-50. I got distracted talking about Rocco. I'm sorry. But if Klay does walk, and it is possible, it all comes down to whether or not money's more important to him or finishing out with the Warriors is more important. And a huge reason why I think it's 50-50, why I think there's a 50% chance Klay Thompson is going to stay with the Warriors is he knows how good he has it here. All right. Klay Thompson can be a little petulant at times. Klay Thompson, we've seen his pride step in. We've seen him in his feelings. And he gets away with a lot because Steve Kerr lets him get away with a lot. And he's got Stephen Curry as a teammate. He's got Draymond Green having his back. You lose all of that if you go to Orlando or Philly or wherever you might end up if you're seeking the bag. And Klay is very cognizant of that. So there is a strong possibility that despite Klay's actions, unfollowing, deleting content of him with the Warriors, I still think there's a strong possibility he comes back. And kudos to the Golden State Warriors for sticking to their guns and not giving him the money that he wants. Because again, it affects the team directly. You give Klay Thompson the money he wants, kiss those mid-level exceptions goodbye. And you need those mid-level exceptions to bolster your bench. Strength in numbers, baby. It's an adage that also reflects reality when it comes to Warrior success. So 50-50. That's where I'm looking at right there. Look at Bruce Morrow. I love that term. Dazers or Dazistas. Look at you. I love that. Bravo. Coining a little nickname for the audience. Bravo, Bruce. Good for you. Stoked. And again, I'm going to start bringing people into the chat, from the chat onto the show. That's a feature I couldn't do with the last program. I could do that here. And Bruce and Laura, everyone, Ollie, Cool Breeze, Adrian, Keith. I want all of you on the program, man. So that's going to be starting very soon. But let's get into Jonathan Kuminga. And first, let's play this one last soundbite where Kaminga is talking about just how excited he is with this young core. I'm excited too. Again, the future is so damn bright. Thank you, Bob Myers. And thank you, Mike Dunleavy Jr. for drafting Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis. Kudos to both of you. Let's hear what Kaminga has to say about his young core. And I say, yes, his young core, because this could very easily be his team someday.
Jonathan, when people think of the Warriors, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is Steph, Klay, and Draymond. And there's some question about how much longer those three can stay together, will stay together. But with what you saw with the younger guys, you, Trace, Brandon, Moses, how encouraged are you about the future with this team, with that group of young guys?
I'm very excited to see, because I know we got, like you said, everybody else, Moses, Trace, BP. Think it's a great core that stick together. We're going to do big things. And I'm really excited to see how that comes out, because I'm very excited to just keep growing with those guys around me. Hopefully we can make it happen like Steph and Dre and Klay. But I'm very excited, I'm looking forward to that.
I'm excited too. I am very excited. And again, I love this kid. I'm all aboard on Team Kaminga. And when you hear his bio, which I'm going to read, I think depending on, I guess, your persona and what you value and respect in this world, but if attributes like independence, like a lack of privilege, being grounded, having an old soul, if respect for intelligence, if those values are high to you, you're going to like this kid a lot, especially after you hear this bio. He grew up from humble beginnings. And yeah, we're going to get into it. First of all, his stats on the season. Jonathan Kuminga, in his breakout year, 2023-2024, averaged 16.1 points per game, which was good for third on the team. Kaminga was third on the Warriors in scoring this year. That's important, all right? It's important to keep that in mind. He shot 52.9% from the field this year. That was fourth on the team. Now, again, the three-point shooting left much to be desired, although it did improve, thankfully. He finished the year shooting 32.1% from deep. That number definitely needs to go up. I have faith it will. Kaminga was fourth on the Warriors in net rating, behind Steph, Draymond, and Brandon Pajemski, who led the team in that category. Jonathan Kuminga averaged 4.8 rebounds per game this season. That was fifth on the team. That number is improving. To put it in perspective, last year he averaged 3.4 rebounds per game. So that went up to 4.8. And it's likely going to be hitting the 5, maybe even 6 rebounds per game mark this season. Jonathan Kuminga averaged 2.2 assists per game. That's a part of his game, sorry for the redundancy, that I actually think is blossoming. This is a kid who is not selfish as a player. He likes to get his teammates involved, and his passing is exemplary. And again, this 2.2 assists per game was 7th on the team. Not bad. Not bad for a player who's not known for his passing. Jonathan Kuminga this season averaged half a block per game. That was 5th on the team. He also averaged 0.7 steals per game, also 5th on the team. And the stat that bums me out the most when it comes to Kaminga is minutes per game. He averaged 26.4 minutes per game. That is a weak number. He was 7th on the team in that category. 7th. Who averaged more minutes than Kaminga this year on the roster? I'll tell you. Stephen Curry, number 1. Okay, justifiable. Klay Thompson, number 2. 2 might be a little high, but okay. Draymond Green was 3rd. Andrew Wiggins was 4th. Brandon Pajemski was 5th. Chris Paul was 6th. And then Kaminga was actually technically tied for 6th in minutes, I apologize, with Chris Paul. But that's a joke. And then Moses Moody was right behind them. Minutes need to go up. They absolutely need to go up. Travrock79 real fast in the chat writes, the future of the Warriors is bright as long as they aren't traded away. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And again, I don't see Kaminga being traded. Joe Lacob does love the kid, thankfully. If Wiggins wasn't throwing games this year, Warriors would have made the playoffs, maybe. Or if Draymond wasn't suspended. A lot of what ifs, but yeah. All right. So here is Jonathan Kuminga. Who is this kid? I'm going to tell you right now. I'd go to a commercial right now, except at the moment, there are no spots. So enjoy that. Jonathan Kuminga grew up in the Congo, a country formerly known as Zaire. And he grew up in one of the bloodiest conflicts in the world since World War II. Kaminga witnessed atrocities that he will not talk about. Quote, why dwell on the past? The future is bright. Unquote. In 2018, Jonathan Kuminga left everything he knew. His home was Goma, Congo. He left his parents, his friends, his life to chase the NBA dream here in the United States and eventually became the number 7 pick in the 2021 NBA draft. He's 6'7". He has a 7-foot wingspan, terrific scorer. Young Congolese players call him an inspiration. And when Kaminga left in 2018, he left his mother, he left his father, and he left nearly 93 million people in his home country of Congo in sub-Saharan Africa at the young age of 13. And he continues to be proud of his home country of Congo. On most of his social media accounts, he continues to fly the Congolese flag proudly. And soon after he became a pro in the G League Unite, Kaminga wrote an article for the Players Tribune. This is a publication dedicated to professional athletes, former athletes. This was started by Derek Jeter. And Kaminga wrote an article, penned a letter called All the Kids Back Home. His relatives, some of which are still in the Congo, depend on him for financial support. So he supports his entire family. According to the World Economic Outlook database, the Congo is the 6th poorest country in the world. So I don't think an individual who grows up in Congo can be anything but humble. More than 60% of his home country's population lives on less than $2 a day. Many Americans know it as a land marred by hunger and war. Rebel groups burn down villages there. Understaffed hospitals struggle to control Ebola outbreaks. But even though Kaminga can attest to some of his home country's hardships, he remembers a Congo that was not chronicled in world news. I'm going to hit a pause button here 1 second because my dog is going crazy. Back in 30. Sorry about that. I forgot to leave the door open for my pup. He was going nuts. Let's resume the Jonathan Kuminga story. So Kaminga grew up shooting at a laundry basket nailed to a pole in his backyard. That's how he started playing basketball. And now here in the U.S., he's got some money, but he still relies upon the same people who once helped shield him from violence in Congo. His older brother, Joel, a former Texas Tech basketball player, manages his day-to-day schedule alongside their cousin, Selene. Kaminga got a home for his mom, Bridget, and dad, Didier, who is from Burundi, a small country east of the Congo, in San Francisco. So when they come see their son, they got a home here in the city. Quote, people often ask me how I dealt with being away from my parents for so long. It was something I was prepared for. I didn't really worry. I just knew that I'd get to see them eventually as long as they were alive. I'm just happy everyone's good. Where we come from, nothing's guaranteed, unquote. And Kaminga went a long time without seeing his parents. He left Congo at 13, didn't see them again until he was with the Warriors, which is crazy. Almost all of the playing surfaces in the Congo where he grew up playing are outdoors. Some of Kaminga's earliest memories are of sliding around a dirt court as he heaved shots at a wooden rim, toes poking through beat-up sneakers, knees covered in scrapes. Soon after Kaminga turned 10, his parents started letting him make the 45-minute walk to the nearest basketball court by himself. And Kaminga says his favorite days growing up were the 1 or 2 times a month when, as a reward for good behavior, his mom gave him money for a local internet cafe. Now, what would Kaminga do when he would go to this internet cafe in Congo? He would go to YouTube, where you're hopefully watching this show now, or maybe you're listening on a podcast, and he would search for Kobe Bryant highlights. And again, this is another example of Kaminga and where Steve Kerr just is so obtuse when it comes to so many of the young players on his roster. Jonathan Kuminga looks up to Kobe Bryant. That's who he wants to be as a player someday. What's his head coach's response to that? Well, we want you to be more like Sean Marion. Are you out of your effing mind? What kind of teacher are you to lower the aspirations of your player? I get that Kerr wants a Sean Marion type to fit a role on his roster, but if that player becomes Kobe instead of Sean Marion, I'm sorry, that's better. And Jonathan Kuminga is not Sean Marion. Too good for that. That really perturbed me when I heard that story. And Steve Kerr was open about it. The dude is just obtuse. I mean, look at what he named his son, for crying out loud. Anyways, I digress. I do that a lot. I apologize. So going back to the story, for the next half hour, Kaminga would just stare at these YouTube clips of Kobe Bryant dazzling crowds with acrobatic dunks, which is a huge reason why Kaminga loves to be a high flyer himself. And when the money would expire and his session would end, at the internet cafe, reality would snap back in, and sometimes nightfall would near, because he remember it was a 45-minute walk to this internet cafe. And so if nightfall neared and Kaminga tried to walk home in the dark, he would risk getting beaten, or maybe even worse, getting killed by someone from a rival ethnic group. That's how life is. That's what life is like in Congo. The Second Congo War, which traces its roots to the Rwandan genocide, ended a year after Kaminga was born. But it's not like the violence just ended right there. Dozens of armed groups still terrorize Goma's North Kivu province today. And this was his upbringing. And look, if you grew up privileged, if you grew up life being easy for you, you don't have this perspective. But if life was not handed to you on a silver platter or anything near that, you might have some empathy with Jonathan Kuminga's perspective. His neighborhood offered a haven of sorts. He witnessed extreme poverty and hunger at a young age, but he says he never saw anyone get killed, which is a relief. I'm sure that could be traumatizing. His most visceral memories of the conflicts in Congo were from November 2012, when a rebel group named M23, believed to be backed by neighboring Rwanda, marched into his home of Goma as UN peacemakers watched. A 10-year-old Kaminga followed the news as the rebels exchanged fire with the Congolese army at the city's central roundabout during their 2-week incursion. Quote, "At some point, the rebels came where I was. We didn't run away, though. We stayed where we were." Unquote. Dude lived around a war zone. And he lived in the same area as then Congolese President Joseph Kabila, and where he had a house. But Kaminga's goal by this point was already clear. He wanted a basketball scholarship to the U.S. He wanted a path toward the NBA. His dad himself had been a power forward. He was one of the Congo's best basketball players. So Kaminga comes from basketball progeny. When Kaminga's dad, Didier, was a young man, he had a chance to play college basketball in the U.S. He got a scholarship. However, Jonathan Kuminga's dad, Didier, stayed home to marry his high school sweetheart, Bridget. I like that. I like romantic stories. The couple found government jobs. They raised 4 sons. Kaminga has 3 brothers. I apologize. The 2 oldest are Joel, who I mentioned a moment ago, and then Jonathan. And they became well-known in Congo on the travel circuit. They became well-known for being basketball prospects. When Jonathan Kuminga was 12, his dad brought him to a dilapidated concrete court in Goma and told him to show off his best moves. Kaminga was 6'4" at the age of 12. And so for a half hour, he just did a display. He basically made a reel that his dad recorded on his phone. And they hired a professional cameraman to help them edit this package into a highlight reel. They sent that highlight reel to prep schools throughout the U.S. Mountain Mission School, which is a boarding school in rural southwestern Virginia, offered Kaminga a full ride scholarship. And just 6 months after his brother Joel flew to Florida to try to be an NBA player himself, remember I mentioned he played at Texas Tech, Jonathan Kuminga rode 4 hours with his parents to Kigali International Airport in Rwanda. He was carrying a single suitcase. He hugged his parents, Didier and Bridget, goodbye. Didn't shed a tear. Again, he was 13 years old. Jonathan Kuminga told himself this was his destiny. Everything will work out. There was no other choice. Emmanuel Mudiay, Kaminga's cousin and also a 2015 NBA draft pick himself from the Congo, had this to say about his cousin, quote, "It doesn't shock me that he's in the position that he's in right now. Coming from the situation that we came from, you have the ultimate motivation, giving your family a better life. Nothing's bigger than that." And Kaminga himself says American opulence, right? All the material wealth, all the first world problems people bitch about here irks him. And I sympathize with that so much. Quote, "It's hard to relate when someone is complaining to you about their parents not buying them the type of car they wanted. I know what a real struggle looks like. Not having money, not having food. Here, it's a totally different world," unquote. And sometimes I wonder if this is where the disconnect is, by the way, between Kerr and Kaminga. Now, Steve Kerr experienced his own tragedy that probably grounded him a lot when he was young, and that's his father being murdered at a university in Lebanon. I hope I have my facts correct there. But Steve Kerr also grew up in Pacific Palisades, a very affluent community next to Malibu, whereas Jonathan Kuminga grew up in a war-torn, impoverished country. And I sometimes, again, wonder if that difference sticks out. And, in the lead up to the NBA draft, this was after Kaminga played a year at G League Ignite, he slid down some front office draft boards. Scouts started questioning his makeup and thinking, this is how moronic the majority of NBA front offices, from the execs down to the scouts, there are idiots everywhere. And these same idiots that thought Cam Whitmore should fall to 20 in last year's draft thought Jonathan Kuminga, who was projected by some to be the number one pick in one of the deepest drafts in NBA history, he slid all the way to 7 because some scouts questioned his makeup. Chatter circulated that he was a loner and might not fit in an NBA locker room. Are you out of your effing minds? Some teams wondered if he lacked dedication. Your wonderment is foolish, you dipshits. Those closest to Kaminga believe he's often misunderstood. His transient lifestyle, he did attend 4 schools in 4 years when he came to the States. 4 schools, 4 years, 4 states. Kid moved around a lot. That could not have been easy. And I relate to that as well tremendously. That made him comfortable in solitude, but teammates at each stop considered him friendly and likable. Eric Jacolish, who coached Kaminga during his sophomore year at Our Savior New American School in Center Reach, New York, said, quote, "Anyone who questions Jonathan's commitment to the game clearly doesn't know him. This guy has sacrificed as much as anyone to get where he is today." Again, was his coach during Kaminga's sophomore year and junior year at 2 different schools. Kaminga's sophomore year was spent at Our Savior New American School, again in Center Reach, New York. His junior year was spent at Patrick School in Hillside, New Jersey. And when Kaminga first came to the States, he surfaced on recruiting lists as one of the best players in his class. Less than 3 years later, he scored 43 points against future number 1 draft pick Cade Cunningham. And soon after that, Kaminga emerged as the country's top rising junior in high school. And this highlights Kaminga's maturity, the acclaim, all this attention that started raining down on Kaminga. It made him acutely aware of how he could be perceived. So self-awareness is another attribute of Kaminga's. When teammates invited him to parties, he often declined. He knew that just a fleeting lapse in judgment, Anthony Lamb, could land him in the news for the wrong reasons and derail his plan, not just for himself, but his entire family. So Kaminga filled his free time with more basketball. During his junior season at the Patrick School, he ran drills before and after practice with a private skills coach. Sometimes late at night, he returned to the gym for extra shots. Again, some scouts questioned his dedication. These idiots. After graduating high school a year early and reclassifying to the 2020 class, Kaminga signed with the G League Ignite, based in Walnut Creek, by the way. I don't know if they moved since then, but Kaminga was right here in the Bay Area his 1 year in the G League. He got recruited to Duke. He got recruited to Kentucky, but he picked G League Ignite because they offered him a $500,000 contract, which, what did he do with that money? He helped take care of his family. And after a strong start in the G League, earned a brief buzz as a potential number 1 draft pick, Kaminga learned from a cousin a month before the draft that Mount Nyiragongo had erupted for the first time in nearly 2 decades in Congo. This volcano was a constant menace during Kaminga's childhood. It once erupted less than 9 months before Kaminga was born, which left hundreds dead, over 100,000 people homeless, and this volcano was erupting again. Became a distraction. Kaminga's frantically calling and texting relatives from an apartment he had in Miami. He was fearing the worst for his loved ones in Goma. His grandparents were among the million residents who had to flee the city because of this volcano. Thankfully, no one lost their homes. None of his relatives were injured, but several 100,000 people were displaced. Another 500,000 were left without clean water as lava poured into the city's main reservoir. Welcome to Congo. And Kaminga was haunted with videos of homeless people sleeping in churches, schools, and he was distracted. This is why these moronic scouts were saying that Kaminga was not dedicated enough. A month later, Warriors executives, including Bob Myers, took Kaminga out to dinner in Miami. They had little idea about the chaos unfolding in his hometown. The only thing they knew was that in addition to him possessing immense upside as a prospect, that he was very mature. Bob Myers sensed his maturity, and that played a huge part in why Myers drafted Kaminga. Quote, "It's hard for an 18-year-old to sit there and answer questions from an NBA owner, GM, scouts. He handled himself really well. He was talking about his parents coming to town. He was happy. He hadn't seen them since he left." Kaminga speaks 4 languages. Bears a similarity to Kobe Bryant, who's also bilingual, or bilingual, I think, counts 2 languages. 4, I don't know what the word is, but Jonathan Kuminga, besides English, speaks French, Swahili, and Lingala. And he is the 6th Congolese player in NBA history and the first from Goma. That is your Jonathan Kuminga bio. I hope you learned something. Oh, Bruce Morrow speaks 4 languages too. I speak 2 fluently, 2 I struggle with, but yeah, I sort of got 4. Trap Rock 79 writing, "Where did the scouts GMs get those dumb ideas about him?" Because they're dumb. because they're Bruce Morrow writes, if Kaminga is traded and the Warriors win the chip, is that a good decision? Well, yeah, I mean, look, the ultimate goal is championships. If a trade was again, this is why I don't support the Kevin Durant trade idea for where that involves Kaminga, because Kevin Durant will not bring a championship to the Warriors. Giannis Antetokounmpo will bring a championship to the Warriors. That's why I'm not opposed to trading Kaminga for Giannis, and why I am opposed to trading Kaminga for Kevin Durant. Championships are the goal, brother. So winning is the goal. That is the only goal in professional sports. So yeah, it would be a good decision if you traded him for a championship, because that's the goal. Greg Gordon saying, wish you could stick around for this very long show, which I would not have been able to pull off at my previous home, but all good. That's why the show is also recorded. You can catch the rest of it later. Gilbert Arbalo. Thank you for saying it and not me. That a certain other program that I was once a part of was a snooze fest last night. Good to hear. All right. I hope you liked it. Thank you, as always. This is a daily show. Back at this tomorrow. I'm going to start bringing guests on the show soon. I'm just feeling this thing out a little bit, but thank you as always. It means the world. I hope you learned something in that this program today about Jonathan Kuminga. ACS04 writes, do you think we will keep Moody? I sure hope so, man. Moses Moody, how would you feel if the Warriors traded you? What would be your first reaction?
I mean, it sucks.
Yeah, it would suck. It would absolutely suck. Thank you to everyone. We're done. Back at this tomorrow. 1 p.m. will be the target time for every show. If I'm late, it's only because the work prepping went too long. I do apologize. I hate making people wait. So I'm sorry if I ever do that to you. But we'll be back at this tomorrow. Yeah. So thank you. We're done. That's it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.